Athlete Builder Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Bibu. We have Tom Sroka. Make sure I said that correctly.
Nailed it.
Welcome, Tom. A little background on Tom. What I like about just the intro itself, one that I'm saying it, but two, I'm looking at all the sports he played, and basically it was the whole buffet at school. You know, it was everything, baseball, soccer, basketball through middle school, and then wrestling and football and track in high school, and then continued on to in college, football and track. Overall, well-rounded athlete, but more so, I would say, a strength athlete. And it's still continuing today, where he's still that hodgepodge of all the different things that you can do. So he's owned his own CrossFit gym, Big Shoulders CrossFit, and we'll get into that here in a second. But he's a weightlifter, studied underneath the legend Glenn Pendlay, formerly with Cal Strength, and that split up. And when he was in the Carolinas, he followed him down there. He's done strongman, Highland Games. He's currently getting ready for this upcoming season with Grid League. So he's still doing all the things, still lifting, been an owner of the gym, like I said, and been a weightlifting coach at other CrossFit gyms. So Tom just basically loves training and competing, and can't find another hobby is what it sounds like. And that's
pretty much,
that's the guy we have on today. Tom, welcome.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's definitely enjoy the training aspect more than the sport part in high school and college.
You know, also he's been training kids. He little kids, junior high, high school. He's trained at those levels. Been a PE teacher, and still has kids that he trains with sports performance. So it's constantly getting people better, including himself. And it seems like I don't want to put too many words in his mouth, but similar to what the whole premise of the show is that he and I are trying to make an impact. And
100%.
And that's kind of sums it up. So Tom, where are you at?
Currently, I am in Wendell, North Carolina. It's about 30 minutes outside of Raleigh.
Gotcha. And you're an Illinois native, right?
Yes, sir. Born and raised on the south side of Chicago.
So then that means a Sox fan, right?
Absolutely. I don't root for the Cubs.
No Cubs. Gotcha.
Come on now.
And went to college there and taught there and owned a gym up there.
I owned a couple of gyms out there. I had originally started out with the Big Shoulders because I was my business, the Strength Agenda, started out remote. So I decided to open the CrossFit kind of as like another avenue of fitness. And then so I had Big Shoulders CrossFit. My weightlifters trained in the CrossFit. And then I decided to sell my half of the CrossFit to my business partner to run the Strength Agenda as a standalone business because I wanted to get more into the sports performance side of stuff. And then had a small little like 2,000 square foot unit building. Then we moved into like a 5,500 square foot unit. And then 2 years after COVID, closed that down for no other reason outside of just the revenue streams were all not going to the appropriate places. Because I had been doing remote coaching for so long, I had a good system in place. And so during COVID, I just rented out equipment. Everybody took equipment home and was training in their garages. And then when it was time to come back into the gym, we could start going into buildings and stuff like that again. The athletes just stayed in their garages. Like they returned the equipment, obviously, but they stayed in there. And so I was at the point where I had, I want to say like 80% of my athlete base was still training remotely, but like 80% of like my monthly revenue was going to overhead for a gym space. So like the math just wasn't adding up anymore. So I decided to let the gym space go. It also afforded me the ability to be able to travel more for competitions and stuff like that with my athletes. Like I was pretty, well, you know, this as a gym owner, like you can't travel a ton for competitions and stuff like this. So it allowed me to kind of be able to travel more, have more like one-on-one time with my entire crop of athletes versus like some athletes getting to see me a lot more than others and things like that. So it's still a little bit of a work in terms of getting a good balance going, but it's been a lot more. There's been a lot more avenues to grow as a result of that. So,
and you still have the Strength Agenda online. That's your main platform for reaching out to folks, making an impact, and helping them get better.
Yeah. Majority of our athletes are Olympic weightlifters. Youngest athlete I have right now is a junior in high school. And then oldest athletes I have are pushing like that 50, 60 year barrier. And then we're now starting to get into other avenues of like powerlifting, strongman, Highland Games. Those are like my four main things. And then I have what's considered like my general strength and conditioning, where those are like some of our high school kids that are training, using the lifting as a supplement to their sports and things like that, that I've either worked with in the past or when I do travel to Chicago, we'll get together and I kind of just make sure that they're moving well and they're doing things the way I want them done, and then that way we can communicate better, via the remote video review and stuff.
Gotcha. My training partner Brian Weiss, he was going to be excited when he heard that it's was a Big Shoulders CrossFit or CrossFit Big Shoulders.
Yeah.
He's like, oh man, because all Brian loves his favorite lift is anything overhead press.
Yeah. It's funny because like when we came up with the name for it, my business partner Brendan Ziegler and I, everybody just assumed that it was a vanity thing, and like I named the gym after myself, and that wasn't the case. It was just like so the gym's located in Elmhurst, Illinois. It's still there, and it was kind of cool because anybody that's like been in Chicago and stuff like that, you can see the skyline pretty much from miles out, and where the gym was located, you had a clear shot of the skyline as long as there were no clouds in the sky and stuff like that. Like on a clear day, you could see the skyline, which I always thought was a cool aspect. And a lot of people don't know there's a poem by Carl Sandburg where he calls Chicago the city of big shoulders. So I just thought that was a cool,
sure,
because there's that whole like homage of, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us kind of a thing. So me being all poetic about it, and just the fact that the gym was in the shadows of the city of big shoulders. I was like, Big Shoulders CrossFit. That's it.
Nice.
And so that was how we came up with the name of it, and Brendan agreed with it. And it's like I said, that gym opened up in 2016. So they're coming up on their 10-year anniversary here in a little bit, which is pretty awesome.
That's huge. I had my 10-year last year, and the days are long, but the years are short is what I say. And it goes by super quick.
You guys hosted a level 2 a while back, didn't you?
We hosted level. We've hosted things other than CrossFit certifications that weren't specialties. We had strongman certifications, powerlifting through CrossFit. Okay.
Because there was a level 2 out in your area that when I owned Big Shoulders, I almost came out to. But then obviously once I sold it, I didn't need the level 2 anymore.
For sure. Did I see on your Instagram that you had just won, or is that a throwback to a prior year where you just won in Chicago?
So I haven't won a Chicago Highland Games yet. I just that was the caber toss, which happens to be just my favorite event in all the Highland Games.
Right.
I won it the last 2 years. This year I did not. This year was a fun competition though. We had a lot of good throwers. Chicago's a unique format where they have men and women competing in the pro division, but they're competing against each other.
Okay.
So it's just straight up points down the board. So we had 12 athletes competing, so it was a big group, 6 men, 6 women. And it was kind of all over the place in terms of Chicago is one of those games where I love it because it's obviously my hometown games, but you cannot make a mistake. And if you do, it really screws you for the rest of the day. And I made 2. So it's just one of those situations. By the time the caber video that I posted this morning, by the time I got to caber, I was just trying to have some fun because there was no way of getting on the podium after the 2 mistakes that I made. And so I was just trying to have fun and just continue to entertain the crowd, because a lot of people don't understand, especially in the pro division for the Highland Games, that's the main goal is to entertain the crowd. Yes, you could be the greatest thrower. Yes, you could be a world champion, but most of the people that attend these events don't understand, or they don't know the difference between you and the world champion. If you're standing next to each other, all they're going to know is this guy interacted with me, this guy put on a show, I found he was entertaining, and so on and so forth. And if they are coming back to the festival, that means the festival's getting that revenue that they can then put towards the athletics and take care of you guys the next year.
Yeah, that's all. It's all ties in. Same thing is true in the strongman world. In its origins, it really was brought along with a lot of different circus acts, and they would bring in on the strongman guy to do these feats of strength, and they kind of grew from there. But the idea is to provide entertainment, just like any other athlete. People go to watch that as well.
I'm actually reading right now. I can't remember the name of the author, but it's called The Strongest Men on Earth, and it's essentially a chronological history of the old time strongman and stuff like that. Right now, it's talking about the Royal Albert Hall before it became what it was now, with all the vaudeville acts and everything along those lines, going through Samson and Apollon and all those guys. Yeah, Sear, all those guys, and how they came to be, where they came from, how they were making money and stuff like this. It's actually a cool little book that I'm about halfway through now.
So you're just a nerd of the sport as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would definitely bill myself a strength nerd. And that's probably one of the things that I would say annoys a lot of my athletes or annoys a lot of people when they talk to me about stuff is I want them to understand where their sport came from. Weightlifting is a big one for me because, for all intents and purposes, the sport of weightlifting changed after the 2016 Olympic Games. And what we see now in the sport of weightlifting is nowhere near what it used to be in the previous quads and stuff like that. So I just want them to understand what some of our top athletes had to go through before they got into the sport so that they can understand how they were able to get the things that they have and the kind of struggles like PEDs is a big conversation. Like weightlifting they're never going to be gone in weightlifting. I don't care what anybody currently involved in the top of the IWF says. They're still there. People are still doing them, but the sport is about as clean as it's ever been. And that's easy to see with how much better the Americans are placing, because nothing has changed in the US in terms of our training philosophies, our methods of practice, and our drug testing. The only thing that has changed is they've started to crack down on some of these other countries. And so it's not as easy to get away with it. And as a result, we're starting to place better at these competitions, bringing home more medals at international things. Whereas like if you did 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. Athletes like Donnie Schenkel, somebody I got to train with, puts up comparable numbers to Wes Kitts. Wes is a little bit of a better clean and jerker and snatcher overall, but like Wes's best snatch, I believe right now is like 176 or something along those lines. Donnie has snatched over 170. I watched Donnie clean 220. I believe Wes's best clean and jerk right now is 222. So like their numbers weren't that far off, but Donnie never lifted it in an A session. Never won Pan Ams. I think he medaled at Pan Ams a couple times and stuff like that. Whereas Wes has won Pan Ams. He's, been top 5 in the world and stuff like that. And it's just one of those situations where it's a matter of like the drug testing. So I like to remind my athletes in particular when they start talking smack about older athletes or, past Olympians or something like that. It's just like the athletes and the way the athletes train has not changed. The sport and how it's governed is what's changed, and how they regulate people following the rules.
There also used to be a third lift though.
That was back in like the 50s. Like they haven't done that strict. Oh, well, that was the other problem too, though, or not a problem per se. That was probably the only in the U.S. in particular. That was probably when training shifted, because back then you had the Norb Szymanskis, you had the John Davises and the Paul Andersons and stuff like that, because the strict press was an event, and it wasn't like you took it out of the rack. You had to clean it first and then press it.
Right.
They essentially just eliminated it because it was getting hard to tell whether people were using knee bend or not.
Right.
And I still that's probably one of my biggest pet peeves in strongman is when people will post a strict press PR and I'm like, that's not a strict press. Like you use momentum, like it's like, especially when they start like at like their nose, bring it down to the shoulders and then I'm like, that's a drive. Like that's not a strict press. Like strict press starts on the shoulders, just press it up, lean back. I 100% have no issue with, but then when they will bend their knees or like do the extra momentum, bringing it down, I'm like, that's not a strict press. Yeah. That's a whole other argument for a whole other day.
I'm totally guilty of it. I would take it off my shoulders and have it right around the chin and kind of come down just a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. And
I mean, fuck. It's human nature.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and be like, say that I have a perfect strict press, because I've done it too.
Right.
It's just human nature. You want to lift as much weight as possible in those things. But what drives me nuts is when it's like a blatant, like not even close. And they're like strict press PR. It's like, no, it wasn't.
I walk by and I'm coaching some folks and I'm seeing them doing it. I'm like, yeah, that's more of an incline bench without the bench.
Yeah, right.
I get that, and I've done it with a log because it's my face.
Oh, yeah.
Face is in the way. So, but no, that's not going to really be what we're all about here. I wrote down 3-time All-American shot putter. So in the Highland Games, are your favorite events the Braemar and the stone puts, or is it something else?
When I first got into the Highland Games, yes. But then. So like I kind of, like you said, I bounced around with stuff. So I started doing the Highland Games right out of college. I actually did it while I was still in college. I played 1 year of football, got hurt, was rehabbing an injury in the fall. And the guy who was the athletic trainer at our college was big in the Highland Games. He's big into powerlifting, big into strongman. He was like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? I'm like, nothing. He took me to a Highland Games. He's like, you're going to throw this weekend. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Obviously, the two events I did the best in were the two stone puts.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first got into the Highland Games, the stones were my bread and butter. Then about, I'd say 3 years in, I got recruited to do Olympic weightlifting by Glenn. And that 4-year break, like, I'm not going to say I forgot how to throw shot, but I haven't been where I was, because like that was one of like the biggest issues I had when I started working with Glenn in particular, was my whole left side, left arm, left leg were way weaker than my right arm and my right leg. And so like it took so much time to balance that out and kind of work on that and get that left side to catch up to the right side, that when I went back to the Highland Games, it wasn't an advantage anymore. Like I still throw far, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
I'm just not like I was very comparable to like my collegiate numbers, and I'm not even close right now.
Yeah, I imagine you throw far when you're in the pro level.
Yeah, I mean, I throw far enough. But like right now, like my favorite event has always been caber. It was one of those events where the first games I did, I couldn't even pick the thing up. And I've told this story a million times, but like the guy who was eventually became our throws coach at Aurora University, where I threw, and Terry, the guy that got me involved, Terry Smith, he's the guy that got me involved in the Highland Games. They took me to a park like the week after my first Highland Games, and they're like, this was embarrassing. Like, you're not going to embarrass us like this again. Like, we're not leaving here until you figure this event out. And we literally, in this like retention pond in Naperville on like a Tuesday or a Thursday night, I literally threw for like 4 hours trying, because I thought we were going to practice all the events. No, they literally just had a variety of cabers, and they're like, we don't care which one of these you turn, but like you're not leaving until you turn a caber. And it took me 4 hours to figure it out, and I finally turned a caber at that practice, and I haven't missed the caber since. Like I've turned it at every games I've gone to. I've got a few outliers here and there. Like last year in Phoenix, I ended up getting a no turn on the caber and stuff like that. But the caber is hands down my favorite event. 2021, I got to go up to Fergus, Ontario, and they have like the unofficial caber championships. And I won that. Got a nice little trophy. I sent you that picture. That was that trophy that I had. Like
Gotcha.
I got my name engraved on it and stuff like that. That was pretty cool. But caber is my favorite event. And I'd probably say the height events are my next two favorite events, just because sheaf is just goofy looking.
Yeah.
It's not like the questions and the looks I get walking through an airport with a pitchfork with a book bag taped around the top of it are pretty good.
Right.
And then obviously weight for height. Weight for height was just one of those events. Like I used to watch the Superstars competitions and then the World's Strongest Man when it was, back in the 70s and 80s with my dad and stuff like that. And so like World's Strongest Man always had the weight for height when, with Kazmaier and John Paul and all those guys. So weight for height was just one of those events that's just, I feel like that is like the epitome of a strength athlete, is being able to do that event. So those are like probably my top three events.
The cabers, there are different components. They got to stand it up, and then the actual pick itself takes time to work your hands down, and then there's a timing component where you pop it up and then catch it with your hands underneath it.
Yeah.
Then you got to steady it, and then you got to get the momentum going in the right direction so it's going forward. You time the stop, and then it's one big hang snatch. Because you're trying to from your hips, you're taking your hands all the way up as high as you can, trying to flip that stick, and hopefully it goes end over end at a 12 o'clock and gives you the highest score you can. That's a technical event, and those guys said, "All right, just figure it out."
Yeah, it's honestly, it's just one of those
so
situations
typical Highland coaching. Throw further, throw higher.
Yeah,
that's
pretty
it,
much. Like, and it's funny. I feel bad because like people who are like bad at the caber toss, they'll try to ask me like, "Hey, like, what do you got? Any tips?" I was like, "No offense, like you're not gonna get it on the day of the games." Like I said, I'd be happy to go over stuff with you outside of it, but like day of is not the time to be trying to learn this. There are a few dudes, like there have been a couple of like high level Olympic shot putters or like strongmen that have come over and have been able to manhandle a light enough caber into position when they pick it up off the ground that they can get enough momentum to flip it and get a turn and stuff like that. But we're talking like 80, maybe 100-pound cabers and stuff like that. Once you start getting to like the 110 range, and above, usually those cabers are about 17, 18, 19 feet, sometimes 20 feet. And like you say, 120 pounds, well, it's not too heavy, but it's also like the height of the caber. Because like you said, you have to time your pull to get it to land on the other end and have enough momentum to still go over. And then you take into consideration things like the ground. Like, is the ground wet?
Yeah.
Like, did it rain the night before? Is it going to just stick in the mud, plant, and go over? Is it like hard ground where it's going to bounce? So you've got to get it to go a little bit higher. Like, there's all these different things, that go into it. That it's like golfing. Like, you learn the field that you're going to throw. You learn the different sticks because each region has different types of trees and wood that they use to make their cabers. So it's kind of one of those things where you've got like your bag of tricks, but it's 100% like circumstantial based on the day and the games and the weather and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Going back to the constant with the weightlifting, you're at Pendlay and you've been working on that. There's a full body timing component with both those lifts.
Yeah.
There's a strength component. Can you pick the weight up? But from that point, it's all power. And so same thing with caber and throwing. It's all power. It's great to be strong, but it's better to be powerful, right?
Yeah. And my caber consistency got better after my time with Glenn. Like, I was good at caber before. Like, I could usually pop off like 1:12 o'clock. But then after like my consistency and my work with Glenn, I was 100% able to start hitting more 12s on a consistent basis and stuff like that. So, excuse me, you could definitely, like, there is definitely something there that warrants like the implementation, whether it's just like high pulls or anything like that, but just some form or fashion of Olympic lifts in your training for power athletes.
Now, you had that imbalance when you got there. You're pushing off your right side all the time as a thrower.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen in 6 months. It happened over years of training. So it's going to take some time to fix that component, build up the other side. But I got to believe you're opened up and susceptible to more injury with that kind of imbalance. Did that rear its head at all?
It definitely has. Like, so my left hip, because like Glenn, for all intents and purposes, Glenn's style was very Bulgarian-esque. Like, we went heavy fairly often, and the reasoning behind his thought process with training was 100% like most top-end coaches get their athletes at 14, 15, 16 years old. He was getting guys in their mid to late 20s. So he didn't have as much time to develop them. So he was trying to push the technical aspect and the strength component at the same time. And so definitely went through lifters more than like the average Joe. But those of the athletes who were able to kind of tough it out and make it through, if you made it through like the first 2-3 years with Glenn, you were golden. I made it through like the first 2 years, and then I started to have injuries pile up based on like my issues and stuff. Like, case in point, I have no bursa sacs in my left hip. I caught a clean weird one time. Like, Glenn and I got into an argument at the gym. He said I didn't do something, I did it. And then me being, a hot-headed, 20-something-year-old, I did cleans. I loaded up my percentage work. I had been done for like 20 minutes. Loaded up my percentage work cold in my gym shoes, cleaned it, stood up, twisted weird, and felt like a pop, 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 pop in my hip as I stood up. Like, and that was that. Still trained through it and everything like that, like an idiot.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, right, exactly. But it was just like that whole like left side imbalance thing, and that led to issues that like stemmed into my lower back and my shoulders and stuff like that because of that imbalance. And so I didn't really take the time to address those until after I was done with Pendlay and with training for the Olympics and stuff like that. But yeah, those things definitely reared their ugly head, and it's kind of one of those like hindsight is 2020. Like, I wish I would have taken more time to do more accessory work after every session, kind of bring up those imbalances and stuff like that. But I didn't. I was just kind of
fuck it, I'm going.
It was like the whole Conor McGregor thing. Like, fuck it, we're going live. Or not Conor McGregor, but the Stephen Colbert thing. Like, fuck it, we're going live. Like, we're doing it, kind of a deal.
Right.
So yeah, that was just kind of the mentality. Because I mean, you had guys like when I got there, I was the bottom of the totem pole. I had 6 guys that were ahead of me. So it was just like, and it was like your typical like football type. Like I was the rookie. I got like last pick of equipment. So like everybody used to poke fun at me because like in my training videos, I'd have a bunch of yellows and greens on the bar. And it was literally because that was all I had access to. Like Donnie and John and Spencer took all the reds. If there were any reds left, like then they went down to Kevin and Rob. And, you know, and it was just like, you just got what was left because I was the low man on the totem pole sort of a situation. So it wasn't like because I was trying to be cool or different. I was just lifting with what I had access to.
Shit.
Like there's a famous Cal Strength video of Donnie literally walking up to somebody's bar because they were talking and took a plate off the bar and put it on his bar so he can continue training. I think it was John's bar. And it was just one of those situations. It was just kind of how it was. Like people ask all the time, what was that like? It was like training at Cal Strength was like the Wild Wild West.
The West Side version of Olympic lifting.
There's a filmmaker that we've kind of talked about doing a little bit of like a documentary on those Penlay days. And I honestly, after watching the West Side documentary, probably the closest thing to West Side in Olympic lifting was the California Strength muscle driver days when Glenn was in charge.
Gotcha.
Because I mean, we fought, like we got into fist fights all the time and stuff like that. It was a bunch of hot headedness, like because at that time making the Olympics wasn't very clear cut. So it was just like, it was dog eat dog. You wanted the guy above you spot and stuff like that. And then you compounded the situation at muscle driver because then they had levels for your stipends. You had A, B, and C stipends. And like, you didn't want a C stipend because you couldn't live off of that. B stipend was nice, but then you wanted that A stipend, but they only had a certain amount of A stipend. So you had to be performing better than one of those guys to take their spot. So it just kind of created this dog eat dog mentality and a lot of resentment. Like we're all friends now. Like we all talk to each other when we see each other at meets and, you know, ask how everybody's families are doing and stuff. But there are times where you're just like, I fucking hate that guy. Right. Like I wouldn't be upset if you hurt your knee or you hurt your elbow or something like that on this next lift.
Everything comes down to supply and demand and economics. And there's only so much supply of those stipends and the demand is still high. So at that point of equilibrium, there's going to be friction.
And that's one of the things, like, especially with my younger athletes, like I try to do a good job to remind them about, because like case in point, I remember I used to run weightlifting meets at the last Strength Agenda location. And I remember in the middle of the meet, like I prided myself on the quality of competitions that I ran for weightlifters in particular. I remember having a meet, I was doing weigh-ins actually for a session, and another session was getting ready to warm up. And I had a kid come back, and he was a kid, he was 18, 19 years old, come back, interrupt me while I was doing weigh-ins. And he's like, do you have any more Alico bars? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, there's no more Alico bars to warm up onto, and I only train on Alico bars.
Yeah, goodbye.
And I just kind of looked at him, and I was like, well, there's 5 out there for the warm-up area. There's 1 on the competition platform. I was like, if it's being used, use what you got and figure it out. And the kid ended up not doing well and tried blaming it on the fact that he didn't have an Alico bar to warm up on. And it's just like those kinds of things. Like I had athletes that would start like dibbing bars in the gym. And when they started doing that, I would purposely give them like the shittiest bar to lift on. And I'm like, I don't want to hear a peep out of you the rest of the day about the equipment. I was like, I snatched 335 pounds on a bent Rogue Bella bar. Like, I don't want to hear it. Like it's not the equipment that is going to be your downfall. It's your softness essentially.
Yes, it is.
And so that was one of the things, like I prided myself on having good equipment in the gym, but like you wanted to get on my bad side real quickly was you started ragging on the equipment as not being good enough. And I was like, and then we're going to have a problem.
Alico bars are so expensive. And you'll see on Louis' poster, it's don't have $100 shoes and a 10-cent squat, right? One of his favorite quotes.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories. One of my former athletes, and I wasn't around for the story, but the first time he told it, I died, because it would be something that like you would say, or like my dad or myself, like his dad came with him to his first weightlifting meet before I was coaching him. And his dad is looking around, watching the competition and stuff like that. And he's seeing guys miss snatches like crazy. And he's like, how much is 100 kilos? And his son's like 220 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, Well, I feel like as an adult male, if you're not able to snatch 225 pounds or 220 pounds, like you shouldn't be allowed to compete. And his son turns around and looks at him and he's like, my best snatch is 96 kilos. Like just totally just like shit all over his son. But it was one of those situations where it's just like that old school mentality of just like, why are you wasting your time doing this kind of a thing if you can't hit a minimum standard?
Yeah.
That's a little bit of an extreme mentality. And I've met the guy. I met the guy shortly after I heard about this story, and he's very much so. He goes, well, I'm glad he got his snatch up.
Right.
Like, it's just still no chill or whatever. But I was like, I just wish more parents were like that, just kind of putting that little bit of pressure, on their kids and stuff like that.
I got to believe my dad was joking in this instance, but it's late 80s, and the Braves are in the National League Championship game again. And Sid Bream is on second base. And Francisco Cabrera comes up as a pinch hitter. He's a left-handed hitter. It's the ninth inning. It's the last game of the series. And they need to score Sid from second base for them to win the game. And he hits this ball. And Sid is a first baseman with bad knees, bad everything. So he's hobbling. He's hobbling around third towards home. And that pinch hitter, hit a great gapper. So Sid slides at the plate and he's called safe, and it's a big, everyone runs the field, blah, blah, blah. And my dad just turns to me and goes, and here you sit.
Yeah.
like I'm in 7th grade. Okay. I'm not in the major league baseball. And he goes, and here you sit. I'm like, come on, man. Like,
oh yeah,
whatever.
It's my dad was very much the same way. My dad was super tough on me, as a kid and stuff like that. Like, it was just one of those. I remember very clearly winning a high school track meet, an invitational in the shot put, and I think I threw like 49 and change, 49 feet. I was like a sophomore, and I got pulled up to varsity for this invitational through 49 feet. And I remember like my dad couldn't be at the meet; he had to work or something like that. And I remember coming home, telling him, showing him my medal or whatever, and he looked at it. He goes, "What did you throw?" And I told him or whatever, and he goes, you couldn't try just a little bit harder to hit 50. Like, it was just one of those things. I was like, thanks, Dad. Appreciate it, kind of a deal. Like,
I won.
And I think like my next meet, I went out and I threw 50 feet and I didn't win. I think I took third or something like that. But I was like, I threw
50, motherfucker.
Yeah, I threw 50. And he goes,
did you win?
Well, how much further? He's like, how much further did you have to throw to win? I was like, God damn it, dude. Like, come on. Like,
right.
But it's one of those situations. Like, I am very appreciative of it now.
Yeah.
Because like, it's like when certain things happen, it's just like that whole mentality of like, act like you've been there before kind of a deal. Like, it's just, to a fault, I am never satisfied with the current status. Like, I want a little bit more. I want to be able to like this past weekend, I didn't throw great in Chicago, but it was an improvement on the games I did in April. Like, I should have been happy and, whatever with it, but I was not. Like, I just kept fuming about all the mistakes I made versus like the positives and stuff like that. So like, but if I didn't have my dad being like that as a kid, I probably wouldn't be that way now with everything that I do, whether it's, my business stuff, personal stuff, just that discipline to just continue to focus on the next task.
Kaizen is a Japanese term, and it's one of our core values, and it's you're always looking for 1% better in everything. And I got to believe that, similar to me, like, right or wrong, good or bad, that every kid is trying to please their parents, right?
Oh, 100%.
And it's built into your identity and your psyche. So from now until I die, it's like, hey, I need to do this so that the parents still kind of love you, right? Even my dad's good; he's dead and gone. It's still part of who you are, and you're trying to improve. And
100%,
right or wrong, I'm glad I have it. But it's
I am too.
It tears you up as a kid, though.
Oh, 100%. I'd rather be that way than the opposite.
Right.
And just being like happy to be here, like that. I feel like a jerk when I say it out loud, but like people who are like that, like I can't relate to them. Like, I have a very hard time carrying conversations with them and stuff like that. And like, I respect them as human beings. I'm not going to be a jerk or, go out of my way to be mean to them or something like that.
They're just different.
But just at a core level, like, it's one of those situations where it's just like, I can't relate to where you are. And I'm sorry for that, but like, this is how I see things, kind of a deal.
Yeah. Whether it's your business or your first time in college playing sports or you're weightlifting with Glenn or you're throwing it as a pro, there's got to be some kind of like, holy shit, I'm definitely in it now moments. Like my
Oh,
welcome to football, my welcome to throwing, my welcome to
yeah.
weightlifting.
Yep.
Got any of those?
Oh, I mean, I could probably do one for each of them. Like I remember college football. Um, like I was one of the bigger kids my senior year. Junior year, I was not.
Receiver?
Like I wish. No, I played fullback, and then I got moved to offensive line.
Gotcha.
And it was one of those, like, my junior year, our offensive line averaged like 300 pounds and was like 6'2".
Okay.
And then my senior year, I was 6', 255. Like, and I was one of the biggest dudes on our offensive line. Like we had another guy that played. Yeah. Right. Like we had another guy that played. He was he was the right tackle, and he was like 6'1", 275. Like we were the two biggest dudes on our team. So like, I just remember I used it to my advantage. Like I was a flat out bully. Like I would do shit on the field that would probably drive people nuts. Like I would just do, because I knew I wasn't like the absolute biggest. So I would do shit to get under people's skin just to piss them off, and then get them all out of their head and all riled up or whatever. And then I take advantage and like own them on the field and, got my job done.
Right.
And I remember going to college, I went into college with like the same mentality. Like, I'm just like, I'm not going to be the biggest dude here. They also had me playing defensive tackle, which was a position I had never played a day in my life. They said they were good at offensive line, so they moved me to defensive tackle, and I enjoyed it. Never had played the position a day in my life or whatever. I was a little bit bigger. I bulked up to about 280 to play defensive line and stuff like that, but I was still 6 foot. And I just had the same mentality. And I remember I don't know what the name of the drill is, but it was essentially one of those drills where everybody or the running back or the guy with the ball starts with on their back. Then they blow the whistle.
Yeah.
You've got to roll, run, and there's a guy meeting you. And you have to essentially try to run that guy over, and that guy's trying to tackle you. But once you get past that guy, there's like 3 more behind him, each like 10 yards spaced out. And I remember, like, you kind of get a look at who's in your group as you're getting ready to lay down or whatever. And I'm looking and I'm just like, oh, these guys are, they're smaller than me. Like, I'm gonna be able to just like bulldoze my way over them. But I'll tell you what, there was like 4 of like the meanest sons of bitches I've ever, like, they had a mean streak in them. And I remember the first time, the second kid, first kid I hit, we kind of like hit, and then I kind of was able to push him out of the way. The second kid, we smacked helmet to helmet, and like we both like stood up, and I was just like, ow.
Right.
Like, it was like the first time I had ever hit somebody in football and said ow after I hit them. Like, that rocked me. And so that was kind of like my wake up, like, oh, this is college football. Like, this isn't high school where you just got some kid that's just on the field and just happy to be here. Like, every one of these kids that got, brought onto this team is fighting for a spot to travel. Like, they all have the same mentality you do. They all have the same mean streak that you do and stuff like that. And some of these guys are just flat out better than you. So you better figure out like how to be better than them, sort of a deal. And that was like my very first like college one. Olympic weightlifting was just literally my first day training at Cal Strength, like training with John North, Donnie Schenkel, Spencer Mormon, for people who know those guys. At the time, they were essentially 3 of the top lifters in their respective weight classes in the country. And one of my very first like Max Out Friday sessions, I got thrown to the wolves with them. Like, I think we did like a max overhead thing, and I just absolutely got obliterated. Like, overhead, I was a strong overhead presser. Like, I push pressed 400 pounds before I jerked it. And so like I was very confident in my overhead, but then when you go up against somebody like Donnie Schenkel who can jerk 220
kilos,
it's kilos, which is about 484, almost 500 pounds, kind of puts things in a little bit of a different perspective for you. So that was kind of my like up, like, yeah, like I got some things to do here, sort of a situation.
I was at Purdue. I started in '93, and you're a South Side Chicago guy. I got to wonder if you got a little bit of Mike Allstott playing fullback. You got a little bit of an affinity, or you like Mike watching Mike Allstott play.
I love Mike Allstott. He was when I actually just saw a reel about it the other day. like one of my favorite times as a football fan was when Tampa Bay had Lorenzo Neal and Mike Allstott in the backfield, and they called it their Rhino package. I believe it was when Tony Dungy was their coach. It was one of the last years he coached in Tampa Bay, but he called it the Rhino package. And Lorenzo Neal would play fullback, and Mike Allstott would play running back. And you had about 520 pounds of man just coming downhill at you
hard
in a goal line situation. I'm like, I don't care. You know, Bruce Smith isn't stopping that. Like there were some bad dudes that played. Reggie White, Bruce Smith,
yep,
Gilbert, not Arenas. Can't remember his last name. The big nose tackle for the Green Bay Packers, Gilbert something. Like,
oh yeah,
those guys were not having a good day when you saw those two standing in the backfield. But yeah, Mike Allstott was one of my favorite dudes. When I graduated college, he went to Joliet Catholic Academy.
Yep.
Right about an hour south of Chicago, and his mom still lives out there. So like I had a house. I lived a couple blocks away from where his mom was, and every once in a while you'd see him out there. Like, you know, he'd be visiting his mom, cutting her grass or something for him or whatever. But I think he lives in Tampa now still.
He would do these drills where he would have a car. He would either push hands on the bumper from telephone pole to telephone pole and then rest, or he'd have a harness and he'd have to drag it from behind him. You know, he had to keep building up the upper body strength with the push, but those quads, you know,
he was
just massive.
He was
running into people.
It wasn't him, but there was another guy in the NFL at the time that like accredited his leg strength to pushing cars. And like at the time I drove like a really shitty Ford Ranger. And so I literally would just start doing the same thing during the summers. Like on like leg day, instead of going to the gym, I would just push. Like I had no idea what I was doing, but I would push my little, you know, Ford Ranger, like you were talking about, like light pole to light pole, and then to kind of take a break and stuff like that. And it was just like, it was probably one of my more productive summers in terms of leg training and stuff like that. Didn't do a ton of extra stuff, but like I had gigantic legs. None of my pants fit right and everything like that. And felt probably about as strong as I ever had. But I don't know if my old ass could keep up with that kind of a workout now.
I use sleds all the time with our kids, and
yeah, I love sleds.
If I had to pick one implement, it would be that, because I can still get upper body and lower body.
Oh, 100%.
I like a barbell, but then I need a rack too. But the other thing about a sled, you can use it for conditioning, you can use it for leg strength, speed work too. But you can be an idiot and lean forward and move a sled and get better. You know, a clean is technical, a snatch is technical, but a sled, man, any idiot can do it, and you're going to build up a ton of capacity. I absolutely love them.
One of those like multi-way prowlers with like the pegs that come out of the top and you can put on the other side. Like they're, I actually, one of my my senior research papers for strength and conditioning, I literally did on like how many different exercises you can come up with a sled, and I came up with about a list of like 100 different exercises.
That's perfect.
I kind of cheated because they were like, I had a handle attachment, like a rope attachment, with handles. But I was just saying, like, all I needed was a sled, weights, the 2 posts, and then like a TRX handle attachment.
Yep.
And like I literally came up with like this manual essentially for like 100 different exercises on what you could do with the sled and stuff like that. And I still use a lot of sled work and stuff like that with my training with my athletes, both for myself and my athletes today.
Love that. With we talk about the components with Athlete Builder. With the head, you know, there's the mindset, there's your knowledge of the sport, and then there's what comes out of your mouth with teammates. And one of the things you put out there about mindset, you want to be willing to be an Indian instead of a chief, meaning you don't want to be the leader. You can sit back and just learn and contribute. Most lessons for me, because I'm not that smart in the beginning, I'm a little bit better now, is that usually it takes some kind of painful lesson. And not always, but, you know, I'm sure there's some times where you're like, oh man, this is that Indian chief lesson. I should have learned that a while back.
Yep.
What made you say that phrase or come up with that, or how's that important to
you? Excuse me. The big thing was just like you have your levels of competitiveness. So like going from high school to college, that's a big jump. It doesn't matter whether it's Division III, NAIA, D2, D1. Going from a high school competitive sport to a collegiate competitive sport is a little bit different. High school people are sometimes just there just to say that they're on the team, but college, like everybody wants to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the same thing like post collegiate. Like, did I ever play on like any like football, basketball, whatever, professional teams, no. I did do grid when the NPGL was a whole full-on thing. I got to train for the Olympics. I've been on a couple of Team USA teams for Moss Wrestling and stuff like that. I've competed at some prestigious events for both Strongman and Highland Games, you know, at the highest levels and stuff like that. And even from, you know, the collegiate level to that level, it's a whole other jump of dedication. And so it's just one of those things, especially when I learned this in college. Like, I went into college with a cockiness. We'll go with that. And I very quickly, like, I thought I had it all figured out. I like, you know, because when coaches are recruiting you, they're going to blow smoke up your butt. Be like, yeah, you're going to be a star. You're going to be this. You're going to be that. Like, they're going to pretty much say anything they can to get you to go to their school. But then once you get there, you're just another number. You're just another jersey. You're just another spot on the roster. And like, nothing is given. And so I my first year in track in particular, like, I was an asshole. Like, I was not nice to people. I talked a lot of smack and stuff like that. But like, my results didn't back it up. So and like, our throws coach didn't really help much at the time too. Like, it's not a knock on him, but like, the throws coach that we had, he was more into football. He was our defensive line coach at this university. That they asked if he wanted to help out with track. He did. He took a couple of weekend courses to learn about throwing and stuff like that. But he was literally that kind of coach who was like, yeah, just fucking throw it farther. Like, I don't know what you're doing, kind of a deal. And then the following year, the offensive line coach, who actually he was an All-American in college in both football and track and field, took over our throws. And he kind of challenged your thought process. Like, he was one of those, like, he used to tell us all the time, like, you can't learn if your mouth is running, or like, you can't hear what's being said if your mouth is running, sort of a situation. And that kind of set the pace for me in terms of like, hey, like, I need to shut up a little bit more and just do versus like talking, kind of a deal. And that was kind of like the start of the shift. And it was kind of interesting for me because the further I went along in college, the more I led by example versus like my words. Like, then by the time like my junior year came around, I started leading the team workouts. Like, but I wouldn't sit there and be like, hey, we're going to work out at this point. Like, somebody would ask, and I'm like, I'm going to the gym at this time. If you want to get your workout in, I will be in there from this time to this time. If you don't, that's fine. Just don't come ask me for a different time, kind of a situation. And so like, the younger throwers and even some of the sprinters started coming to the gym to get their lifts in when I was in there, because I had started to help write the workouts, because we had a strength and conditioning coach the first 2 years, and then he left. So we were kind of left to our own devices. And I told you about my buddy Terry, who had introduced me to the Highland Games. He was also a big conjugate guy. So like, he started giving me all the manuals and stuff like that. So I started reading up on conjugate, learning about it and things like that, and kind of incorporating it into our training. So like, I was like writing our workouts in college. And so, but it wasn't very much like, hey, I know more than you about this, which is why you should listen to me. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this at this time. If you want in, great. If not, like, my feelings won't be hurt, kind of a deal. So it was that more like just leading by example. And then and then, you know, you take it a step further. When I got to Glenn, like I told you, I was low man on the totem pole. So like, for the first few months, some of the guys used to crack jokes whenever I would talk. They're just like, oh, we didn't know you actually knew how to talk, kind of a situation. Because I was just sitting there and observing and learning and just like figuring how everybody operated in this ecosystem. And like, I spent more of my time talking to Glenn, like on our car rides home, because for the first like few months out there, I lived with Glenn. And so I would just say, like, I was like, hey, in training, you had us do this today. Like, what is the point of doing this versus doing something like this? And just kind of picking his brain and stuff like that. So that's where this whole like Indian versus chief mentality has like developed for me. Like, I don't necessarily walk into a room and start talking. Like, I want to hear you talk first. I want to get a feel for how things are operating. I want to get a feel for what the pecking order is before I start trying to either insert myself into the situation or help with the situation. A similar thing I'm going through with the grid team right now. Like, everybody on the grid team has been with this team for at least a year. Some of them have been since the start of the team, which is like 2-3 years old. I am essentially the new guy, even though I do have significantly more grid experience from my time in the minor leagues and the pro league when it was there. There's only one person on the team that I feel like has just as much experience when it comes to full on grid as I do. But I'm still the new guy on the team. So like I kind of got a little bit of a hot start by like trying to call people out and try to challenge people and say like, hey, we need to be doing better with this, this, and this. But then I kind of realized like it's falling on deaf ears. So I've kind of just completely pulled back, and like I'll offer little pieces of input here and there. But for the most part, I'm now just kind of had to remind myself of that like Indian versus Chief mentality. And like I've told the coaches, like I'm like, I will do whatever I can to support everybody and help everybody. But I'm not going to take charge, because it doesn't seem like A, it's well received, and B, it just doesn't feel like it's my time or place to do that just yet. So that's kind of the big thing. And I do it with my athletes too. Like, yes, I am in charge. Yes, I am the coach and stuff like that. But my rule of thumb is like, I'll tell you to do something once. And if you think you know better, like I'm going to let you essentially test that assumption at your earliest convenience. And then we can come back, reconvene, and try it my way and see how it works out.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that in both instances, college and then with Glenn, there was a level of maturity and humility that occurred. You're like, you know what? I got humbled here a little bit, and you took a step back and had that realization, and then adjusted. So that's huge. And then it seems like from that point on, you're like, well, shit. If I didn't know this, what else don't I know? And then hence begins the journey of being the strength nerd, right?
Yeah, Don McCauley was a huge proponent of that. Don McCauley used to tell it. He was another legendary weightlifting coach that passed. He was with us at Muscle Driver for a while there too. But he was a guy that used to tell me all the time, he's like, the minute you think you've got everything figured out is the minute you're done.
Yeah.
He's like, because I'm 60 something years old. He goes, and I'm still, you guys teach me stuff every day. Like he was another one that I got to pick the brain of a lot and just ask like, hey, why are we doing this? Why do you think this is a good idea? Those kinds of questions and stuff. And then he would ask me stuff like once, like after I left Muscle Driver, like I didn't leave Muscle Driver on the greatest terms. Like long story short, it wasn't with the coaches per se. It was with the people who wrote the checks, that me and them had a lot of disagreements on how things were actually going versus, how they interpreted things going. So like I left like scorched earth. Like I was like, fuck you, fuck this, fuck them. Like I didn't want anything to do with anybody. But again, that kind of maturity set in. So like I kind of went out on my own, started coaching more, had ran my own businesses and stuff like that. And like in 2018, I was at a Masters competition, Masters Nationals, coaching my athletes, and Don came over. And we were just talking and whatever, and he was watching my athletes, and he's okay, well now like tell me what you see with this individual, why you have them moving this way. And I would explain to him, and he's like, you know what? He goes, I never thought about approaching it that way, kind of a deal. So it's just like that things coming full circle, and not necessarily me being, quote unquote the master, but me being able to teach him something, or just to teach him how to look at something in a different way. But at the end of the day, everything I knew when it came to weightlifting came from either Don or Glenn, and then even Travis Mash, who was there like the last year. Like the first 2 years was 100% Glenn. Then Don came after those 2 years because Glenn started having health issues. So then I had those last 2 years with Don. And then like the last 6 months or so is when they brought Travis Mash on. So I even got to learn from Travis Mash, who's another phenomenal strength. Yeah.
Legit.
So like just being like anything that involves Olympic weightlifting primarily came from those three individuals. And then other people that have helped me along the way as well.
Yeah. Yeah. When people think of CrossFit and Rogue kind of they're hand in hand, they'll think, they'll say, hey, Rogue is a CrossFit company because of all their equipment. I said, well, yeah, but it's true. They have a great relationship and provide great products. But have you seen their documentaries? Like they give a shit about the strength world. They just want people to lift because that's their product and all. But they want people getting healthier, stronger, in better shape, whatever. And we just love all of that, So that's how our gym is a little bit like that. We have sports performance, strength training, and then CrossFit.
I feel like Rogue. And I know some people are going to probably get their panties in a bunch about this, but I feel like Rogue understood the impact that CrossFit had on the strength community and the fitness community before CrossFit realized
Oh yeah,
the impact that they had.
the
Like,
weightlifting world too.
yeah, just in general.
Yeah.
Just strength and conditioning as a whole. Because here's the deal. Like, before CrossFit, when I would tell people that I was a weightlifter, the number one question they'd be like, well,
What
what's
do you
your bench? Yeah. They had no clue what a snatch was, what a clean and jerk was. And then 2012 is really where CrossFit really kind of like burst onto the scene, started to pick up their steam. And from there, you had grandmas and uncles and cousins and random Joe Schmoes doing snatches and cleans, ass to grass squats, trying to do handstand walks,
Mm-hmm.
Kettlebells, doing, gymnastics rings and all this different stuff. Like CrossFit, and I will say this because people think I bash on CrossFit a lot. What I have a problem with is the implementation and the overall coaching in CrossFit, not the system itself, because CrossFit has put a barbell in more hands than the next 5 fitness fads combined.
Yeah.
And like, that is just irrefutable. And I feel like Rogue saw that and was like, we can build a business off of that start that CrossFit did. Like, CrossFit introduced the barbell to people, introduced that fitness and that strength and that, like, all those things that you can find your niche
Yes.
within this modality. And Rogue was like, well, here's your niche, but here is the world outside of CrossFit in regards to that niche. When they started doing the documentaries on,
Stoneland.
the Stoneland and
Right.
the people up in Basque Country,
Right.
or all the different documentaries that they've been doing and the different cultures that they've been introducing to the world. Like, I feel like Rogue understood what CrossFit did for the strength and conditioning community and just expounded on that and just kind of took people to the next level and said, well, here's the culture outside of your CrossFit box that fits into. And it's been awesome. Like, I mean, like, anybody that has a negative thing to say about Rogue truly doesn't want to see evolution.
Yeah.
Because that's really what they've done. They've just taken where somebody is and have been able to provide them with outlets to the next level of what they wanted to do. Like, does that mean that some of these people will leave their CrossFit gyms and strictly do strongman, or will strictly just spend all their time outside searching for rocks to lift? Sure. But like, they're still going to come back to Rogue because Rogue was that, like, that blueprint for them to be able to do those things.
When people come to me, they'll say, Jim, you don't like CrossFit, or you don't worry about strongman or powerlifting. I go, you know what? I can take all the modalities and endeavors and poke huge holes in them all.
Yeah.
Huge holes. And, but no one's in this. I'm not going to sit there and say that CrossFit gets you the most. If you just implement it correctly, it's the most well-rounded, balanced approach to get someone healthy that I've ever seen. You'll be stronger, you'll be in better shape, you'll move better, you'll using your entire body weight and or other implements. It's outstanding. I got problems when people are trying to kip a whole bunch and they can't hold themselves up, fine. But people say, well, about strongman, I said, have you ever seen that continental clean where they clean the barbell and it's on their belly and their arched back? I'm like, that's fucked up. That's terrible. There's no reason why would you want that weight sitting on your belly and an arched back. That's terrible for a strongman, right? Or I can look at powerlifting. I see them bouncing that bar off their chest, or they don't squat below parallel and this and that. Whatever. And then you say, well, weightlifting's got a whole bunch of snobs and this and that, and everything has to be perfect. I'm like, well, fuck. As soon as you can find the whole perfect approach to training, let me know, because there's not going to be one. There's not going to be one.
No, and and that's the thing, is that's one of the things that, especially as I started to get older, like, I had people coming to me that wanted me to coach them in various things that I didn't have experience in. And so that's kind of what led to me to being a little bit more of a strengthener, doing all these different sports. I just, like, not to toot my own horn, we talked about this earlier. It's like that whole mentality that my dad instilled in me of just, like, not accepting complacency. Like, I originally set out, true story. Like, I originally set it out and I said, I'm like, I am going to do one competition in every strength sport just so I understand what the athlete is going through, getting ready for that competition, what they're feeling during the competition, so I can help them work through it. But in true me fashion, like Moss Wrestling in particular. I literally got into Moss Wrestling by accident. I showed up for a strongman competition, and I showed up on the wrong day, and they had a Moss Wrestling tournament, and Ode Haugen's like, strongman's tomorrow, but strongman was yesterday, but if you want to do Moss Wrestling, you can go ahead and sign up for it. I was like, well, how do I do it? They literally like gave me a quick demo tutorial, and then they're like, have at it. And that was literally how I got into Moss Wrestling. And then because I did well enough at that tournament, I got invited to go to Hungary and compete in the 275 class. And that was like, it was like the whole thing was just trial by fire. Like, I don't know if you know Ulyss Payne.
I don't know Ulyss, but I do know Ode. I met him a couple times. Like his grip is amazing.
Ode didn't compete at this tournament, but you look at Ulyss Payne, and he is banana fingers is an insult. Like, this man has gigantic hands. He's about 6'4", 6'5", and he is like 400 solid ass pounds. That was who I had to go up against as my very first match in the tournament. Shit. And then like I said, and he's an open guy, so he's in the 275 plus class or whatever. But then like we go over to Finland, or Hungary, sorry, for the World Cup in 2017. And it was a whole other ball game. Like, I had imposter syndrome like through and through. I ended up finishing 6th, but it was just like, yeah, no, I can do better. And so I literally started to, at that, like they have like a social at the end of it. And instead of like drinking and having a good time, I literally was going around to every country's coach that spoke English and asking them, how'd they train? How did you do this? How did you do that? And put something together. And then the following year did well enough in a couple of US tournaments to go compete at the World Championships in Russia that year. And I ended up taking 4th. So I was just like, but it was just, that was how I approached every sport. Strongman was the same thing. Like, I started doing strongman after COVID because I had athletes in my gym that were getting ready for a strongman contest, and I had nothing to do. So I was like, okay, I'll do this contest with you guys. Like, one of the events, it was like a max deadlift was one of the events, an axle clean and press for reps, and it was a very light. Like, I was like, yeah, I'll do this. Like, these aren't hard events or whatever. And I ended up doing well enough to compete at USS Nationals the following year. Wasn't going to do it. And John Connor was just like, hey, like, he goes, what's the worst that happens? Like, you don't like it? He's like, just go and do it. And then he got me in touch with Eric Haas, who kind of helped me out in terms of like structuring my training and stuff like that. And I ended up going to USS Nationals that year in 2021. I ended up winning the overall. And then that's when I met you, because then I was like, well, there's another strongman organization I had no clue about. So then I was like, I got to get ready for SC. So I needed to qualify for SC Nationals. I came out to your show, did that one show at your place, competed at SC Nationals, got good enough or did well enough there to compete at the Arnold the following year. And so it's just like, it was just that same thing. It was just like, okay, well, I did this. Like, what's the next step sort of a situation? But that's how I've like approached every strength sport that I've done. Wasn't intentional by any means. It was just 100% just like my mentality of like, I wasn't complacent enough with that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just push the envelope just a little bit more.
I see these pictures of Louis Simmons, and it's in old days where he's wearing that white wife beater tank top and jeans.
Yeah.
And he's done lifting, and he's just talking to everybody. You know, he enjoyed competing and all and doing that, but he's want to talk to everybody all the time and soak in as much stuff. So when I started my own gym, I did the same thing you just said, and then I entered a weightlifting event, and then I started getting weightlifting training from Dan Brown with Lift Lab, and came across strongman and, and then powerlifting with Shane Sweat, and I was like, well, shit, there's so many things I could do here. And then I go out to Nick or Valenti's place, a Blind Dog, Northern Ohio. Mark for Highlander, which is half strongman, half throwing. I'm like, well, shit, this is fun too. And the only problem, like, you know, I'm 6'3", so that helps, right? And I was heavy enough, but I didn't start lifting until I was 40. Like, I just too late to the game. You know, you were lifting in high school, and sometimes, you know, people start lifting in junior high. So just a little late to the game, but I took the same approach. I need to learn this and take this. So, with grid, explain that for those that don't know, because it's not CrossFit and it's not powerlifting or weightlifting. It's different. It's a team sport. So just explain what that is and your role and how that all works together.
So, grid, the best way that I have been able to describe it is grid is a team sport that has it's essentially 8 races that the best way to describe it is it's a combination of a relay style race that factors in body weight, gymnastics, and barbell components.
Okay.
So you have those 3 different types of people on your team. You have your gymnasts, you have your utility players, which are pretty much people that can kind of do a little bit of everything, and then you've got your strength specialists, which are that's where I fall in. I sad to hurt people's feelings. I'm not a gymnast. But so my responsibility is just essentially if there's a barbell, and I use the term heavy barbell loosely because for certain people the weights are not going to be heavy. But the thing that really gets people, the thing that got me the very first time I did grid was like how, like I was a strong dude. Like my first ever like grid experience, I had just cleaned 462 pounds off the blocks. I had just jerked 484. Like I had a over 600 pound squat and over 600 pound dead. I could push press 400 pounds. Like I was a strong dude. But I went out there and did a ladder, which is essentially they had 4 bars set up for power cleans. And I think it went something like, it was like 225. It was like 225, 250, 275, 300, 325. Those are the bars. And by the time I got to the 300, like A, it took me forever to get through the ladder. B, by the time I got to that 325 bar, I was so tired that I almost missed the clean. And so it's just like, yeah, I was a strong dude, but like it was the repeatability on short rest that was like really the thing that I lacked. And so it just opened up this whole new level of like, this is something that I suck at and I kind of don't want to suck at it anymore. So started doing a lot of intervals, a lot of EMOMs every 30 seconds, every 15 seconds with like moderate loads, like 80% stuff like that. Then you get to the parts of races where you have to do like 10 reps without setting the bar down at like 225. And it's like hang cleans, and you've got to get it done as fast as possible because there's another person across the way on the other side of the grid that's trying to beat you.
Right. Right.
So it's just like this whole component of it. So it's heavy barbell work. But for me, I always joke around that it's more about like that muscular endurance. Like it's because it's not like CrossFit where if you've got like 50 reps, it's like who can tough it out, whatever. Right. In grid, you've got a bunch of people on your team that are in the same position that you're in. So like if you go out there and like, you can do 10 reps ridiculously fast and then you're going to start to peter out. You've got to communicate that to your teammates. Then you need somebody else to come out there and spell you after those 10 reps. And it's kind of like I said, that's why I say relay race is the best way to go about it. Because if you have a component of like 20 to 30 reps, it's how can you get through those 20 to 30 reps the fastest with the least amount of people?
Yeah. One of the things we talk about knowledge with the athlete, and in all these instances so far, that's all you're dropping right here is this knowledge. And that, your strength was a lot of heavy singles or heavy doubles, but the weakness was you couldn't cycle or couldn't do an EMOM. Or
like I couldn't do 70% for a set of 5 fast.
Right. And you need to have those reps to know those things. And you're always kind of hunt for those weaknesses. And you picked the whole different sport where it was, football. Well, this worked out well at this level, but at college it didn't work well. So you need that knowledge component. And so the person that's kind of just getting by on their talent never has to essentially develop that knowledge muscle in their brain of where they're always having to hunt for those little components. And at the beginning of the show, you said when you try for that next level, only 7% of kids play college sports. Depending on the sport, it's 7. Other sports like wrestling, it's 1. Yeah. And so to get to that next level takes more and more, right?
Yeah.
And now you're at this grid league. So now not only do you have to know your own weaknesses, you have to know your weaknesses of your teammates and how all that interlocks. Same thing in football. If I'm the middle linebacker and I know that my outside linebackers are out of position, well, we are out of position and we're going to get beat on this play, right?
100%.
Same with you guys. So it's that ability. Then how do you communicate that with your teammates makes everything happen or doesn't happen. Now, one thing you pointed out question here, but we haven't talked about yet is mindset wise, you want to be able to control what you can control and not worry about what you can't control.
Right.
Super easy to say, right? And when
It
you're a
is.
younger kid and you're an asshole, you're you think you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof. It's not super hard, but whether it's the night before an event and you're kind of sweating it, or it's the moment before where hey, offense is getting ready to come on, you're playing offense, you're getting ready to go on the field. Whether it's the night before or the moment before, it's so hard for most to think about what they can control. Do you have any processes for it? Like the night before, how do you calm down? Or going into the moment or going into the game, do you have any processes that help you focus?
Um, it's kind of a little bit of like a loaded question in the sense of like yes and no. Like at the end, I'm now to the point where like I used to panic during preps and like try to change a bunch of things. Like if things were not going, like I never, until I started coaching athletes, I didn't realize how big of a pain in the ass I was in terms of like wanting to change things in the middle of a prep for a competition. Like I didn't realize how frustrating that was from the coach's
Oh
perspective.
my God.
And so once I started coaching people, that kind of opened my eyes a little bit to like, this might suck, but just trust the process that like the person has in place. So like now it's one of those things for me, like when I start to kind of get into like that panicky mode, I literally will just like, I have done enough in the strength world now that like I can tell you when the sucky part of prep should be, or like when I'm getting ready for an event. So like if I don't hit that, I immediately go to one of two questions. It's like, am I just, is it just off a little bit in terms of like maybe it's not going to be exactly on this week, but maybe like towards the end of the week going into the next week? Or have I not been pushing myself enough during this prep? And like for an event like strongman, it's easy to know where you're at because strongman has predetermined weights.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like it's like you can either do this weight for however many reps or max that they ask you to do it for, or you cannot.
Yeah.
So like during a strongman prep, it's really easy to gauge where you're at, as you're getting ready for an event. Grid, same thing. You know the weights. You just have to know, like, you have to be honest with yourself in terms of what you are capable of there. And so like in terms of the processes and stuff like that, is I probably about halfway through college, I stopped paying attention to start lists. I still don't pay attention to start lists, even as a coach, athlete, whatever. Like that was probably one of my biggest helpful things, was to stop looking at start lists and seeing who was all going to be there at a show, who was all going to be in the competition, who was all going to be at the meet. Because like I can't control who's going to sign up for a thing, who's going to be there, what they did in their training. All I know is what I am capable of. So like in terms of like a process, it's just kind of reminding myself that like, hey, I left no stone unturned.
Yep.
I did everything that was written on that piece of paper, and anything that I didn't do, there was a reason why I didn't do it, whether it was just, was going to hurt myself, or just, the was going to dig a deeper hole in terms of my CNS fatigue or anything along those lines. Like if I didn't do something, there was a good reason for it. And I just kind of go and I write these things down at the beginning of a prep. So like I usually will start about 12, 16 weeks out before a competition, starting to prepare for it. But at the very beginning, while I'm fresh and excited and all gun ho, I will kind of write these reminders down in my notebook. And that like every kind of, 4 weeks or so, I kind of check back in and just remind myself of these things. Like, hey, I cannot control who shows up and what they're capable of doing. I have to be honest with myself and what I am personally capable of. And like, as long as I stuck to the plan, didn't deviate from the plan, like I'm going to be in as good of a position as possible, when, that clock goes off, kind of a situation. And those are just kind of the reminders that I set for myself as I'm going through things, because that's really all I can control. Like all I can control is like, we talked about Zach and like, my meal prep, my recovery habits, my sleep habits. Like, am I drinking enough water during the day? Am I skipping sessions? Am I skipping accessory work? All this kind of stuff that I 100% have control over. Like, I need to focus on all of that first before I start worrying about what so-and-so posted on their social media.
Right.
In terms of getting ready for the show.
If I'm coaching a kid or even myself getting ready for an event, like you you know if you earned the confidence to
Yeah,
go into that event. You know if you've been
100%.
up late screwing around. You know if you've been getting the calories. You know if you're not hitting all those
Oh yeah,
all those builders that get you ready. And those kids know too. They know they've been skipping breakfast on the way to school. They know
yeah, yeah,
that they're not putting out in the weight room, and then come Friday night they're ready to play. Yeah, I don't think so. But so
yeah. Right.
you got to earn the confidence. What do you say to an athlete? Because in any team sport or in any business and in life at all, there are tremendous number of times where life is just bullshit and unfair.
Yeah,
The coach has this bias, has this utter misconception, right? Or teammates are in favor for no good reason, but it's absolutely true. What's your advice for that kid? Does it change at all when they're like, hey, well, this kid's doing this, and that's not fair is the phrase I can't stand. How
yeah.
what I have my responses. What are your responses?
I mean, one. I've had coaches, across my whole life that handle things either very fairly, not fairly. In recent times, like I definitely, um, like I've been around enough to know when a coach is, has favorites or when they don't and stuff like that. And it's just one of those situations that whether it's me going through it or an athlete going through it, I just kind of remind them that fair isn't equal.
Right.
And when it comes to playing time or this or that, like it's one of those situations where I also notice this a lot more at the younger levels versus like the collegiate level, if that makes sense, where it's just like they're the favorites,
Hmm.
favoritism, nepotism, whatever you want to, based on the situation, is always a bigger issue at the younger levels. And like I had one kid that I was working with, I started working with him when he was a seventh grader. He's a football player. He was pissed because he wanted to run the ball, but he was a big kid as a seventh grader. Like he was the tallest kid in his class, probably the heaviest by at least, 10, 20 pounds. And so they made him play offensive line. And he was pissed because the coach's son was the running back. And then the coach's son's friend was the quarterback. And he's like, oh, it's just favoritism, blah, 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 blah. I was like, listen, dude. I was like, by the time you get to high school, none of this is going to matter. I was like, because by the time you get to a junior, like everything's going to even out. Like they're going to hit their growth spurts and they're either going to continue to be phenomenal athletes or they're not. You're going to continue to grow, like whatever. He ends up going to high school. He ends up getting moved to play tight end because, like I said, he was an athletic kid. Like for all intents and purposes, he should have run the ball. But like by the time he was a sophomore in high school, he was like 6'2",
Hmm.
200, like 20 pounds or whatever, like not your prototypical running back or whatever.
Right.
But because he was, he was religious in the weight room, he was a strong kid, but he was also pretty fast. Like I think he ran like a 4.5 40 or something like that.
That's
Like he was a
huge.
pretty fast kid for a big kid, but he wasn't like, he didn't have that reach like those like receivers, like those outside receivers had. So they tried him out at tight end. And he ended up being like an all-state tight end. He ended up going to Stanford to play tight end.
Huge.
Like, and it was just, and then, but like those same two kids that he couldn't stand and like Pee Wee were on his high school team, and they weren't even starters because the dad wasn't the coach. It was just a regular coach, whatever. And it was just kind of one of those, it was nice to see that play out for him and just say like, hey, like I told you, like it was going to work itself out. Just focus on you and what you can do. And now I've had kids do the opposite where all they do is they just come up with, issue after issue after issue as to why they're not getting what they want. They can't focus on what they have control over. And like they let those situations like seep into their personal stuff, whether it's their training sessions. Like this kid in particular, like he would train with me 2 times a week, but then he also had like individual like lessons, hitting lessons or whatever and stuff. And he let what these other kids that he was trying to keep up with at like the middle school level seep into his training. And there was no consistency. There was no uniformity across the board. And he eventually just ended up burning out. And I think like halfway through his high school career, he just stopped playing because he's like, this isn't fun for me anymore. And it was just because he just could not separate like his personal stuff versus like extrinsic, factors and things along those lines. So I probably spend more time now working with younger athletes. And I equate anybody under junior year of high school, a younger athlete.
Yeah.
Like I spend more time teaching them how to focus on the intrinsic versus the extrinsic, because the intrinsic is what's going to lead to the better results at the end of the day and the better consistency and the more fruitful gains, long term. Like I always, my two big things is like focus on what you can control, focus on the long term.
Yeah.
Because like even with weightlifting, like I deal with adults. Masters weightlifting is probably my biggest like membership base right now. Masters weightlifting starts at 35 years old. I tell people flat out like that. Like I have athletes who have started out in the 35 to 39 division, have now aged up into the 40 to 44 division, and are not even into the 45 to 49 division. Those athletes that I have continue to get better year after year after year, and they are starting to kind of climb their way up the podium and stuff like that. And it's more of like outlasting. Like, yeah, you're going to get some freak that's going to come in and be all full of piss and vinegar at 35 years old because they're now like they've got their shot to be the big dog. But like, how well are they going to be able to keep that consistency up for year after year? And that's exactly what happens. They'll start kind of having a little bit of a drop off because they're not the big dog anymore, or injuries start, they don't train smart, or they don't focus on the little things, and it starts to kind of eat away at them, and they essentially start to decline, while the other athletes who just focus on that incremental long-term progress slowly start to creep up on them and eventually pass them up.
Yeah, I totally agree. I didn't start getting healthier until like 38 and then CrossFit at 39. And then I was getting stronger. I was at my strongest at 46. People can get strong, well into their 40s. And if you're a late bloomer, absolutely. But to the point about, the intrinsic versus the extrinsic, I don't think there's any method other than focusing on what you can control. These kids, or even myself or others, will say, well, this event now equals the outcome. I'm like, no, the event occurred. And my next question is always, now what? Not now what, what do you think? Fine. But now what do you do? What do you do? Because there are still high school coaches that are parents that have kids on the team or have favorites. And there's someone that, maybe you're on the basketball team in college and this guy recruited me. And so he's biased against you versus a walk-on who didn't get recruited, and things that are unfair. Well, everybody that graduated in the COVID year, well, you didn't get that extra year of eligibility, but everyone else in college got that 6th year. So they actually don't even need you. So there's a whole bunch of bullshit there you got to deal with. I opened in March of 13 with the gym.
Yeah.
In January of 14, there was a huge snowstorm in Indiana. And it's the one time other than COVID where the governor shuts down the state and says, don't go to work. Well, the first of the year is usually when gyms kind of like blow up a little bit. You bring a membership. Mine tanks because you can't go. And I'm too stupid at that point. I don't even know that, hey, I should have things on auto pay using the software. I'm having everybody pay me by check and cash. So instead of me going up in January and February, I go down. So now there's this gap. What's that look like? Well, that's not fair. That's not what happened. The governor did this. The weather was that.
Right.
Well, when someone comes to get your car repossessed because you're behind on a bill, you figure it the fuck out.
100%.
Right?
100%.
And people ask me, like, what do you do when things are just going so badly over and over again? I said, well, one, I try not to fall off the deep end right in that moment. But I try to calm down. I put my head down, and I'm like, all right, before the day is over, I need to get one win. If I make 10 calls and I get another new client, and it usually takes 10 to get one, all right, I'm gonna call 20 and get 1 or 2, right? Or I'm gonna eat this next meal perfectly. I'm gonna get all my water intake, all my supplements. I'm gonna get this win today and change the momentum. But I have to respond because it all comes down to you and what do you do.
Yeah, I actually posted this yesterday for Father's Day. Like, probably one of like the core memories that I'm ever gonna have from my dad is I played on a travel middle school football team, and I had a game in 6th grade, and I was being held, I was being chop blocked, I was being cut blocked. Like the whole gamut was getting thrown at me because I was a big kid in middle school, like comparatively to everybody else. Like once I got to high school, everybody caught up to me, but in middle school, like I stood out. Like I was 6 foot in like 5th grade. Like I stood out like a sore thumb. So like I would get all like the antics, the nastiness or whatever. Like I would get all the cheap shots and stuff like that. And I would complain to the refs, and they just kept looking at me. They're just like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you, kid, kind of a deal. And so my dad had showed up halfway through the first half. And at halftime, we had a break. Coaches are talking to us. When the coaches were done and we were kind of like off on our own, I was still like hot about it. And my dad's just like, get your butt over here. He's like, what is your deal? So I started explaining to him what was going on because he didn't see all of it. My mom had kind of filled him in, but like, he just wanted to, insert his wisdom and stuff. And I told him, I was like, this is what's happening. Refs ain't doing a thing about it. And I remember like as clear as day, he balled up his fist. My dad had like baseball gloves for hands, and he just put his fist right in my chest. He goes, that's fine. He's like, but what are you going to do about it? And it was just like a light bulb went off in my head. I was like, oh yeah, like I am 100% in control of the situation.
Yeah, you're
like,
not a victim. Go.
Yeah, I was like, they're trying to get in my head and it's working. Right. And then like the second half of that game was a completely different thing. Like I was the problem. And whatever. And so it's just one of those things that it's just like, he passed 2 years ago now. And it's just one of those situations where like from that moment all the way even to like present day, like anytime I find myself, for lack of better terms, just being a little bitch about something, whether I'm upset about something or I'm like, this person is pissing me off because they're not doing it the way I want it done, blah, 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 blah. I can literally feel like the fist right in the center of my chest. And I will just tell myself, I'm like, that's fine. But what are you going to do about it?
Right. How do you
kind of a deal.
How do you respond?
It was just, and so like, that's kind of like, if there was like one piece of advice, like I do try to give out to kids and stuff like that. Another one very similar to it is like, if you have a setback, stuff like that. I had another coach come up to me. I didn't qualify for an event my sophomore year. I didn't qualify for nationals my sophomore year in college. And I had a coach come up to me, and he was a good dude, meant well with it. But he's just like, he put his hand on my shoulder. He goes, I want you to remember this feeling. And it was just kind of one of the situations. He goes, anytime you don't feel like going to the gym, anytime you don't feel like going to practice, anytime you feel like you want to go out to party instead of going to bed when you're supposed to, I want you to remember this feeling that you're feeling right now. And if nothing else gets you to do what you need to do and stay disciplined, like I hope this feeling that you're experiencing right now is what does it. So between those two things, like those are my two things for me personally.
Right.
That I use to kind of motivate myself. And like, I pat myself on the back of being a lone wolf. Like you've seen me at strongman competitions. Like I don't have a hype crew around me or anything like that. No. I train by myself. And it's just between those two things, like those are literally the two things in my life that just motivate me.
That's huge. That's huge.
Further than anything else. Like I literally will internalize any setback and how I felt during that setback. And when I don't feel like doing something, I just have to all I got to do is just tap into that, give myself a little bit of a pep talk, and it's enough to get me to the gym.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like when I feel like just people are just being completely unfair, as we talked about earlier,
yep.
I literally will just like tell myself, it's like, okay, that's cool. They're doing this, but like, what are you going to do about it?
That's right.
And then between those two things, like that's for me, like for as long as I live, that's all the motivation I'm ever going to need.
That's mostly, it kind of sums up how I've learned, and it's never a fun lesson. No, getting the fist in your chest is not a fun lesson. The cut blocks aren't a fun lesson. Being poor is not a fun lesson, but the lessons are learned. And I get all those. The only thing that I would say that's a little different for me is that if I can't find the internal motivation, which is rare, I can always look at my kids' faces and say, I can't be letting that group down, or my wife, right? So there's that additional piece right there where you're like, I'm just not going to puss out because I have my own 3 and my wife has 3, so the 6 of us, and and damn it, we got 4 dogs too. So, between all that, I love going on and on about this stuff, and I got 85 more questions we can get to, but I'll be respectful of everything and your time and all.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it though. Like this is a good conversation. Like I like these kind of chats. I feel like this is the stuff more so that needs to be stressed, especially in the sports performance realm. One of my buddies, one of the few people that like I talk to on a regular basis, this is the kind of stuff that we talk about. Yeah. Like that, the whole like mentality of like, you have to have X, Y, and Z in order to be successful. It's just like, no, like you just have to, it's one of those situations, like it sounds corny or whatever, but it's just like, you just have to want it more than the person next to you. Like time and time again, you take out NIL, take out all this stuff that's happening now with like social media and building your brand. Like you can have the biggest brand, you can have the greatest NIL deals, but like at the end of the day, when you pull all that crap away, strip it all down to the basics, the individuals who are the most successful, Tom Brady in particular,
Yep.
like Tom Brady is a great case study for this. He just wanted it more.
I take that piece and the want it, you have to like take the next iteration because a lot of
Yeah.
people say, I want to do this stuff, but
Right.
that's where the knowledge, like I wanted to play college or high school sports. And then I went to my dad and I'm like, I didn't get to start playing sports until I was like 12, 13 years old. I'm already late.
Yeah.
So as my freshman year, I'm playing basketball. I was 6'2", 190 as a freshman. And I'm asking my dad, what do I need to do to get better so I can not get pushed around? And he goes, man, I don't know, push-ups.
Right.
So even if you want to, you need to have someone kind of helping you, teaching you. So you build that knowledge. And then you need some kind of process because I really wanted to. So I'm doing a whole bunch of push-ups, no pull-ups, no rows, and nothing for my legs. No running, no sprinting. All I did was push-ups, and now I'm kind of fucked up, right? So you still need, and if you want it, then you will go and look for help. You will go learn the things. You will ask others so you can implement your process.
And that was kind of where I got to post-college. Like in college, it was like, I wanted it, and I did the work. I used the resources at my disposal.
Sure.
But like post-collegiate, I was just like, look,
there's more.
I got big goals for myself. Like I need to get outside my comfort zone.
Yeah.
If I want to, get to that next iteration of me as both a coach and an athlete and as a professional in this space.
All right. So I have these rapid fire questions, but I have some other ones that I just wanted to ask you. So your favorite lift all time that you've done?
Favorite lift that I've done?
Is it a big caber? Is it a big snatch? Is it a big stone?
Oh man. Probably like honestly the Arnold amateurs in 2022. We had a deadlift ladder, and it was a weird ladder because it was like a deadlift bar, power bar, axle. And I think the weights went something like 675, I want to say 735. The jumps were weird. And then it was an 800-pound axle deadlift.
Gross.
But the axle was like, it wasn't a full on like partial. It was on wheels or whatever, or on blocks, but it was just like a hair below the knee, like right in that no man's land.
Right. The first away from your center of gravity.
Yeah. It was just, it was like the worst place to start a deadlift. And I remember like I tried every fucking trick in the book in terms of my training and like pushing myself. I could not get 800 to budge in training. Could not get it to budge. Was just like not happening. Put a deadlift bar on there. I pull 800 like it was my job. Power bar, pull it like it was my job. Axle at that height, could not fucking do it. Couldn't figure it out. Like whatever. And then it was again just going back to like just trusting the process, trusting my training. Went to the competition. I ended up smashing it for 2 reps.
Wow.
So like I just tell people flat out, when people ask like what my best deadlift is, I'm like, I've pulled 840 for a triple sumo. I said, but I'm really proud of this 800-pound double that I did on an axle. Like,
love that.
That was probably one of my like favorite lifts that I did because like I couldn't get that thing to budge in prep, and at the competition I was able to get it for 2 reps.
Beautiful. Love that in the moment. The different strength and power sports that we talked about, you only get to pick one to continue going forward.
Highland Games.
Okay. A lot of different events.
The camaraderie is unmatched.
It's
like
fun. It's just fun.
Like, yeah, it's just fun for me. Like it really is. Like as long as I'm still getting invites and I'm still having a good time at the end of the day, like I'm gonna keep doing it as long as I can.
Some of those Masters events, those guys, they'll do a throw and then a shot of bourbon. They're having a great time.
Oh, the Masters are awesome. I mean, you get to throw lighter implements,
right?
So what is not to love? But yeah, like now some games, because you've got a lot of guys that are, listen, Master starts at 40, and then they do Pro Masters, which starts at like 45. So they do a Pro Masters division now, and those classes are actually the funnest to watch. Like I love hanging out with the Masters guys.
They're hysterical. They're hysterical.
Yeah, they're the best. So like, yeah, I'm gonna do high. Like I probably won't be training as seriously as I am indefinitely, like I'm always going to be training in some form or fashion. Like I'm never going to just not have a barbell or a sandbag or a stone or some sort of a odd implement in my hands.
Right.
But like I'm going to continue to train for as long as I can. I'm continuing to do the Highland Games for as long as I can.
Nice. What do you listen to when you train? Anything in particular, or you don't care?
I really don't care, but the odd one that usually makes people like kind of like do the like whole like dog head tilt is when I've got Motown playing.
Okay.
I do love me
Detroit
some
music.
Motown. Yeah, I do love me some Motown. But I'll listen to pretty much anything. I can't lift into like nothing. Like I've done it before. It just drives me insane.
Sometimes I'll lift to nothing for that insanity piece.
I don't know. I can't do it, man.
Bucket list adventure you haven't done that you want to do.
The two big ones is I want to go to Scotland, not to throw Highland Games. I want to do stones with a bunch of the different stones and stuff like that in Scotland, and the same thing with Iceland. Iceland, I have a buddy who has said pretty much if I can get over to Iceland, he'll take me to the stones, and he's kind of picked out 4 of the challenges. And he's like, if you can do these 4 challenges, he goes, I'll pay for a tattoo.
Okay.
He's a buddy of his that does tattoos and stuff like that. And we've joked around. I've joked around, but now I'm serious. Like it'll happen. Like if I go to Iceland, I lift these 4 stones that he has picked out. It's the Fisherman's Stone, the Full Styrker, the Husafell with the lap around.
That's around the pen.
Yeah, it's around the pen.
Yep.
If I can do the Husafell, and then there's the Tombstone, which is 600 pounds, where you just have to wrap your arms on it and break earth,
right,
or get wind underneath it. And then the Farmer's Stone, where it's the one where you have to pick up. I want to say it's like it's another like 400-pound stone, 220-kilo stone. You have to pick it up and do a lap around this little monument. It's nowhere near as big as the Husafell, but the whole purpose behind that one is I think you have to do 50 revolutions or 100 revolutions or something like that, and the farmer's soul gets released. He made a deal with the devil.
I've seen that actually. Yeah, I've seen that.
So those are the 4.
Gotcha.
If I do those, he said he'll hook me up with a tattoo. And we talked about it, and I'm going to get John Paul's famous quote, like, there's no reason to be alive if you can't do deadlifts. And I'm going to get it on. I want to get it on the front of my leg.
I have, well, I decided I have them, and I have them now. But for Indiana, the Hoosier State, I had the 5 Hoosier manhood stones.
Yeah, you kept trying to get me to do the one after I like did your Atlas Stone death cycle. You were like, hey, if you want a shot of this, you can do these manhood stones. I'm like, Jim,
that's true.
Not now. I will definitely come out there at some other point and lift those, but not right after a strongman competition.
Gotcha. Favorite sports movie?
Sports movie, Remember the Titans.
Favorite sport to watch?
Sports to watch? Rugby. Okay. Rugby or hockey.
Okay.
I think NHL playoff hockey is the most exciting TV there is, but man, once you understand what's going on, rugby is so captivating.
Yeah, the World Cup, the sevens? 6s?
There's the World Cup. There's the 2 different. The sevens is the faster one.
Oh yeah.
That the U.S. is actually pretty good at. We're terrible at
15s.
Traditional rugby.
Yeah. The All Blacks and what they're all about. And if you like a good book, Legacy by James Kerr, it follows the All Blacks and talks about what it takes to make that team.
Netflix has a really good documentary on the Six Nations tournament.
Oh yeah, Six Nations. That's what it is. Not the Six. Yeah. Favorite athlete to watch?
Currently, again, kind of off the cuff here, but like Olivia Reeves and Hampton Morris are my 2 favorite athletes to watch right now. They are young weightlifters. They're still technically juniors, but they're going to be representing Team USA at the Olympics this year, and their last like 3 years in the sport have been just absolutely impressive to me. And Hampton is one of those, like Hampton's a 61-kilo guy. I think he's like 19, 20 years old. And he is literally like, he mixes it up with the Chinese and the Korean lifters and stuff like that. Dang. And he medals.
Wow.
He medals. Like he's put the world record clean and jerk on the bar multiple times. Like he's got the youth and junior world records, but he's put like the senior world record on the bar. So like right now, like I'm biased because I'm a weightlifting coach and weightlifting is like my bread and butter and stuff like that. But Hampton Morris and Olivia Reeves right now are 2 of my favorite athletes to watch. Olivia is another one. She's like 17, 18 years old or something like that. She back squats, over 400 pounds, doesn't wear a belt, doesn't wear knee sleeves. just literally her shoes, shorts, and a t-shirt will just bury 400 pounds and stand right up. She competes in the 71 kilo class, so it's like 155 pounds or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's just one of like those two athletes are beyond impressive to me, and I'm really excited to see what they can do, at the Olympics this year and in the next quad.
For the longest time, what I tell CrossFitters this, weightlifters this, anyone this, that strength cures so many sins in the sport. So when someone comes in, they say they front squat 100 kilos and they clean 95. I go, well, the problem is your front squat.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? Well, no, I need to get better at my clean. I go, you're 5 kilos away from perfection here. No.
Yeah.
The margin's too small. Get stronger.
A stronger athlete's always a better athlete.
Yeah. Favorite book?
I don't remember what I wrote on the thing, but not most recently, I was just talking to somebody about it. The Untold History of the United States of America.
Who wrote that?
I can't remember who wrote it. So I took AP history. I originally wanted to be an archiver, like Indiana Jones style. That was originally what I wanted to do with my life. And just didn't work out in college. The guy that ran our history program left, and I didn't like the guy that took his spot. So I switched over to physical education and exercise science. But, in high school, I took AP US history and AP world history, and then AP economics. And the same lady taught all three of those classes. But for AP US history, we didn't use a traditional textbook. She bought this book for us to read. And it was called The Untold History of the United States. And it was a historian who told a non-biased view of how the United States came to be. And then Netflix actually took it and turned it into a whole series. I don't know if they still have it on there or not, but Netflix broke it up into 3 sections, like pretty much leading up to the Great Depression, like United States history leading up to the Great Depression, then from the Great Depression to the Vietnam and Korean conflict, and then to 9/11. Like those were the 3 sections that they used as place markers. And it kind of opened my eyes, and not necessarily to like how messed up the United States has been in the past in terms of how they went about doing some of the things that they did, but it just kind of opened your eyes into like just the human element that just cannot be avoided with some of these things. And so I really enjoy that book. My copy is all like teared to shit. That's why I can't even tell you who wrote it, because like the cover is all ripped up and missing and stuff. But it's one of like my favorite books that I've ever read. And anytime people try to pontificate about how things used to be, it's really fun for me to sit there and be like, actually, that's not how it used to be at all. Like you actually have no idea what you're talking about. Like this is literally what our country used to be. I love dropping knowledge on people in terms of how our presidential election process used to go. Like, I don't know if you know this, dude, but like the primaries were what they did during the primaries originally for the Republican and the Democratic nominations is the person who received the most votes during the primary was the presidential nominee. The person who received the second amount of votes was the vice presidential nominee. The president didn't get to pick their running mate. And the reason that changed was when Roosevelt went into his last term as president. They were worried about him dying in office, which he did. So the Democratic Party fixed the voting. So their guy was in the vice presidential slot. So they didn't have to worry about, because the vice presidential candidate that ran with him the previous 2 or 3 terms had a lot more socialist tendencies in terms of policy. And they didn't want that in the Oval Office if something happened to Roosevelt. So they rigged the primary. So their guy got in the vice presidential spot.
Okay. I would, that teacher because you're all about making an impact, that teacher that obviously made an impact with you.
Yeah.
Man, I'd give her a call or send her a card and say, hey, you know what? Thank you.
I know where she lives, and I used to would just drop a letter in the mail.
That's awesome.
Or in her mailbox every once in a while. Cause she was honestly one of the coolest teachers ever. She was very much a forward thinker. Like the first day of class, she literally said, she goes, "You have all been lied to."
Okay.
And we're just like, what? She's like, even I'm going to lie to you. Like, she goes, you've just got to figure stuff out for your own. And that book was kind of the start of not necessarily questioning everything, but just kind of opened your mind to the fact that there are other possibilities versus what you've been kind of pushed towards.
Gotcha. Favorite superhero?
Either in the DC universe, Black Adam, in the Marvel universe, Venom.
It could be any universe. I like Hannibal Lecter for villains.
Nice.
You have a villain, or you like to both the same?
They're both the same.
Yeah.
They're both like they're. I love the anti-hero. Like I also love Punisher.
Right.
But,
Oh yeah,
Venom and Black Adam were my two favorites. Like as a kid, the Venom comics, like I could relate to Eddie Brock's character. That was kind of like my escape, was just reading a bunch of Eddie Brock and Venom comics.
Favorite lift?
Favorite lift? Depending on the day, but usually it's either going to be a push press or a deadlift.
Favorite way to train?
Conjugate.
Yeah, big fan. Now, if I got someone that's new, I don't need them to do conjugate. They could do 5-3-1 and be just fine. And someone who's never lifted, they could do 5x5 for 3 years and be great.
100%.
Favorite quote?
Favorite quote? It's not necessarily a quote, but it's a poem. The Old Man in the Arena.
Yeah, Man in the Arena.
Love that. Like I don't remember when I first heard it, but like, you know, when you hear something, you're just like, oh shit.
Yep.
Like that was it for me. Like it was just, you know, pretty much just talking about like, don't listen to the people that are like sitting out in the crowd because they're not able to be in the spot of the man in the arena who is being, you know, jeered and broken down and talked about and stuff like that.
Yep. Where can we find you?
My personal social media stuff on Instagram and TikTok is just Strength Coach Sroka.
Okay.
Facebook's just my name. And then my business stuff is all on Facebook and Instagram as The Strength Agenda, as well as the website, thestrengthagenda.com. We do all sorts of stuff there. You don't necessarily have to get coaching. We got training templates. We've got training manuals, all sorts of different stuff there. The social media page, I try to post as much helpful content as possible on the business page. Just because I feel like a lot of people like to just post highlight reels of lifts and things along those lines, but I actually want people to learn. I tell my athletes that too. Like, I don't want you just to blindly do what I tell you to do. Like I want to hold you accountable, but I also want you to be able to eventually try to do some of this stuff on your own and just use me as a guiding force, like throughout that entire process.
What's your next competitive event?
I have the Pulaski Highland Games this weekend. Then the 6th, I have the first grid match of the season for the United Grid League. And then in August, I will be in La Crosse for another Highland Games. And then I have a grid match the weekend after that as well.
Awesome. Tom, thank you for the gift. Thank you for the gift of your time and knowledge today. And thank you for the impact. Truly enjoyed catching up with you again. It's been too long. Dude. And absolutely, man, thanks so much.
No problem. I'm going to have to come by and lift some of those stones for you.
That'd be great. For those that are still that made it through the whole show and you're trying to figure out how can you get a hold of us for any questions, info@athlete-builder.com. Send us your questions. We want to answer them and keep helping you guys out. So until our next show, Tom, appreciate it. Have a good one. Bud.
Appreciate you.
See you.